This week on Filthy Hope.
Forgiveness is like wielding bolt cutters to the chains that chain you to assholes.
That's right.
It just
Cut it off.
if it's living rent free in your own head, chances are the other person hasn't even thought about it.
Yes.
Once you forgive them, you're free. You don't have to think about it ever again. You don't have to hang out with them again. You don't have to see them at that function. You don't have to go to that family thing. You don't have whatever it is. You don't actually have to see them again if it's not safe, if that thing isn't healed, if there isn't any sign of reparation, if there isn't any sign that they're taking responsibility for anything.
Yeah.
You forgiving them doesn't then have to lead to any of those things.
Yeah.
It's just about you forgiving them.
It's interesting,
Yeah.
I never forgave Mick, one of the perpetrators in my own story, and he died. I don't feel anything about that.
Welcome back to another episode of Filthy Hope. If it's your first time here, what a time to join us at the end of the year.
The last one.
Welcome. We're so glad you could join us. This is our last episode of the year, and on this show all year and for a couple of years before that now. It's gone very fast.
New Year's Eve, brother.
Been diving into the grey spaces where Jesus, life and culture intersect. I'm your host, Jonty, and I'm joined by Rev Ness.
Hello, brother.
How are things?
I'm excited. It's New Year's Eve.
Yeah, I don't know how you find that little weird, like, dayless island between Christmas and New Year's, where it's like, what day of the week is it? I don't know.
It's great, isn't it?
I love it.
That you just don't know what's going down.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Except I have to keep prepping services,
that's
brother.
right.
So I know the island. I'm not so much on an island.
Yeah.
I have to at least know when Sunday turns up.
Yeah, and the podcasts keep coming out.
Oh,
so the
I know.
podcasts
It's
roll on.
extraordinary.
Yeah, so I know the feeling. Yeah,
It's cool. Really cool.
So today we are going to do a few different things. We're going to look back at the year in a few different ways, and even look forward to what we're doing next year a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's New Year's Eve, so I thought we'd start by talking about New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
So, Ness,
Yeah.
do you like New Year's Eve? Have you had a favourite New Year's Eve? What do you not like about it? Because I know we talked about Christmas a little bit last week.
I think
and
it
Christmas
sucks.
dinners.
Yeah, I think New Year's Eve sucks, quite frankly.
This is a hot take. Tell me
I
more.
know. Well, I've had two incredibly, deeply memorable, maybe three in my life that I can look back and go, no, they were epic. I think it's not epic because in the past, and we've only recently isolated in the last year or so, I couldn't believe that, that Rob goes into, we do New Year's Eve, everything goes really well till about 10 o'clock, and then Rob goes into this depressive slump.
I remember talking about this.
Yeah. And I just went, I am done with this shit. What is going on for you at 10 o'clock?
This is in the evening on Christmas Eve, right?
Have you drunk too much? It's like, it occurred to me every single year at this time, it was might as well, fuck it, off to bed. I'm done. This is shit. We would often have a fight, and I just went, I'm pulling the pin on this New Year's Eve crap. And then one New Year's Eve, it might have been the year before last, I said, stop. What is going on? This is a pattern of behaviour, and I don't think it's appropriate because look, we're having a really good time. What's going on deep in your psyche? Don't try and analyse me. I said, no, bugger you. I'm going to analyse you. What's going on? And then it all came out that on New Year's Eve as a child, so Rob was raised by his grandparents, and on New Year's Eve as a child, he would spend it with Grandma Henke. So she obviously got him for New Year's Eve. Now, Grandma Henke, Rob's grandpa Henke died when he was 12. So Rob lived with Grandma Henke and the other grandma until he was at uni, 19. I was from a baby all the way up.
Yeah.
But all those years of a young adult, New Year's Eve was spent really sad with Grandma because Grandpa had died. So she was in grief while she's watching the world celebrate. We talked about this in one of our Christmas episodes, didn't we?
Last week, yeah.
And so I think the depth of sorrow that she was experiencing, and Rob also, because this Grandpa was just epic.
Oh, a parent figure, right?
Parent figure. It was not there, and so something was missing on New Year's Eve while they watched the Big Apple drop in New York City. Rob knew that his biological father was in New York City and he wasn't with him. So I think a lot of stuff got stirred up for Rob New Year's Eve. So I've spent 36 years of New Year's Eves with Rob, more now, probably 38, because there were a couple before we actually got married. And I'm telling you, I'm not a fan. But we've had a couple of spankers when obviously he's been so distracted that he didn't go into a slump. And one of them was in Cleveland, Ohio, of all places. We'd been at our good friend's wedding. Rob was the best man. And then we went with the married couple, the bride and groom, 2 days later on their honeymoon to this really fancy hotel. And there was a big band playing like in the roaring 20s. We all had to fully dress up formal. And we're at this big event that was like something out of the Gatsby. I remember thinking, this is the greatest New Year's Eve I've ever had. And I don't remember Rob going into a slump that year. And it was just awesome. I remember one at Curzon Hall. Do you know Curzon Hall at Marsfield in Ryde? It was a big old monastery that looked like a castle, and it used to host incredible events. Often there's weddings there, and I know I've married people there, and they host big functions there. I decided that getting all my friends together one New Year's Eve, and we would all go to Curzon Hall for the big party, all fully dress up. And that was another incredible New Year's Eve that I really remember with all my greatest friends at the time. It was incredible in the early 90s. And I suppose when a New Year's Eve is spent at somewhere else other than at home, watching telly, New Year's Eves are great. Yeah, but mainly because we've had children.
Yeah.
That whole fireworks thing happens and I'm going, oh, yeah, cut the power, I'm done.
You just did the 9 p.m. ones and then...
I just don't give a shit about any of it.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I've had quite a negative New Year's Eve thing going on in my own brain, probably because of what I've been experiencing with Rob. Yeah. Time to turn that around.
Yeah.
Because I've got a few New Year's Eves left in me, I reckon.
More than a few.
Yeah, a couple, mate.
Yeah.
Couple.
Just a couple. Yeah.
Need to vibe that up.
Yeah. There you go. That's interesting.
What about you?
Yeah. Well, there's one that stands out to me that was very odd, very strange, but ended up being really great.
Yeah.
I reckon maybe 15 to 20 of us were down on the South Coast. This is the New Year's Eve, end of 2019, going into 2020, which I don't know if you remember that summer.
Oh, that was the fire summer, pre-COVID.
Massive bushfires
Yeah.
just before COVID happened, that summer of going into 2020.
Yes, I remember it.
We were down there for a couple of days. I think a lot of people arrived on the 29th or the 30th.
Roads got cut off.
4 days down there. We're going to do New Year's Eve down there. On the 31st, so New Year's Eve, it gets to like midday and the fires have gotten worse and worse and worse and worse.
Yep.
And we're particularly in Nowra.
Remember this?
And we're all glued to the fire alert app and the news. And it gets to a point where we decide time to go. Because if we stay much longer, we might get stuck.
Yeah.
And that's fine. But if we can leave, we should do that now. Because there was
they were telling you to go.
Well, at that point, there was no sense that where we were in danger.
Right.
But where we were, the one way out at that point was through Nowra. Still is, really. So we all jumped in the car. We're driving down Jarvis Bay Road just before you meet that junction where it meets the motorway, not the motorway, the highway, wherever it is. We turn right onto that highway from Jarvis Bay Road to go back through Nowra, back up to Sydney. And about 300 metres before that intersection, a cop comes off that side road, stops, sirens go on, he gets out, he holds his hand up. We were literally the first cars that they turned around.
To go back.
And they said, sorry, we're shutting it down. No one's driving through here. It's too dangerous. There's the fires in Nowra are getting too out of control. So they turned us around.
And you were stuck in Jervis Bay.
So we drove back. And there was about a 2 or 3 hour period where it was very, very strange, very eerie. Because a lot of people, there weren't many people there because a handful of, like, a lot of people had left already. And it was really quiet and it was dark because of the smoke.
And the sky, yeah.
And the smoke, the sky, was dropping burnt leaves, like black burnt leaves from the sky. So it was about like an hour or two where it was just, we were all a bit quiet and a bit, this is really strange. And we were never there was never any sense that we were in any danger because of where we were. But after that hour or two, everyone kind of it came to terms with, all right, well, we're here. We can't leave. It's New Year's Eve.
Party.
And we ended up actually having a really, there was no one on the beach.
Oh, it was empty.
So we basically just had the beach to ourselves. And at one point we're going, oh, wow, look at you can see Christmas lights over on that other headland at Nowra. Oh, hang on.
That's not Christmas lights.
That's fire.
Shit.
So very strange, but ended up actually being in terms of New Year's Eve celebrations just in and of themselves, had a great night.
Oh,
we knew we weren't going anywhere the next day, so we
just
really sent it.
Partied.
Had a really good time.
sent it.
Yeah, but we have like my church family, that like the extended like family network of church people and families that I kind of grew up around. Had a tradition for a long time where the families would go to a beach in the late afternoon, have a couple of drinks,
Nice.
and then go back to one of the parents' places, usually one of the places with a pool. And so there'd be all the church families would be at one house for New Year's Eve. So I have lots of great memories of very particular pools, very particular homes on New Year's as a 12, 13, 14, 15,
Oh, cool.
16, 17, 18-year-old, that whole kind
Wow.
of, and then, once we all sort of became adults ourselves,
Do your own thing.
we've started doing our own thing.
very
And
special.
a friend of mine, a friend of the show, Will, g'day. I know you're listening. Hope you're having a good day. Lives in Kirribilli. So last New Year's, we were in the park across the road from his house in
nice.
Kirribilli, where they'd shut off cars getting to, and the trains at Milson's Point are all shut off at that point as well.
And did you watch all the fireworks?
Yeah, so it was pretty empty because no cars, no trains can get into that residential area because of the fireworks and New Year's Eve celebrations. So we got in there, fairly empty, and we had this amazing view of the fireworks.
Off the bridge.
Down on the grass.
Oh, wow.
Glass of wine. It was really, really, really good.
Oh, that's special.
With about, I think there were about 10 of us there
Oh,
last
that's
year.
cool.
Really cool. So, at time of recording, I'm actually not sure what I'm doing this year for New Year's Eve, but I quite like New Year's Eve. I think it's a good good
There's
celebration.
no real food associated with New Year's
No,
Eve, is there?
there isn't. No.
Only booze.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Also, one thing that does annoy me is people in public on New Year's Eve playing their own music on a Bluetooth speaker.
Oh, yeah, not cool.
Like, shut up.
Yeah, that's right.
I get that you're into 90s R&B, but not everyone is. Like, not all of Sydney has to be into that as well.
Oh, that's funny. Oh, gosh. I'm going to be motivated to organise something for this New Year's Eve, Jonty, now.
Yeah. Well, let me know how that goes, because
Yeah, I will.
it's a good. I'd love for that to become
Something great.
something. Yeah, it doesn't have to be something amazing, but something that isn't negative for you.
Yeah,
that'd be cool.
good call. Thank you.
Personal highlights of the year. We're going to look back a little bit at some stuff that's happened in the year of 2024. Why don't I start with you? Like,
No, let's start with you.
Okay, sure.
Tell me, what are your personal highlights of 2024?
I mean, interesting.
The good, the bad and the ugly.
Yeah. In terms of my pursuit of writing,
Yeah.
this was a really productive year for me. I had my first paid gig writing on a film, which was cool. It was a really, really cool experience. Hopefully that film gets made.
Hope so.
At this point, I don't know. Waiting for the phone to ring. But, that's something that I've wanted to do for a long time. And so it was a really actually challenging experience of writing for someone who's paying you to do it in a collaborative setting.
With other writers?
Not with other writers, but I was working closely with another a creative partner, a director. And it's a very different experience writing something that you yourself are passionate about and a story that you want to write versus what I was doing, which was more of a gun for hire, writing someone else's story.
Yeah,
so someone else has had an idea or a seed of a story, and my job was to
bring it to life.
Collaboration to bring it to life. It was a really good challenge.
Wow.
A challenge in a good way, because it's sort of forced me to develop some new muscles, I think.
Fantastic.
And lots of things that I would do differently if I were to do it again today, which is great, because it's taught me lots of lessons.
That's how we learn.
Moved me into some different, more difficult spaces personally in the writing world. And you know, some good connections with actually a friend of the show, Karina Kraminski, has just recently launched a new kind of writing collective group, publishing group, company thing. Really cool. It's called At the Edges.
Love that.
Feel free to go and check it out. Would encourage you to do so.
We love her.
Sat down with her and a handful of other writers once every sort of fortnight through December, November, just talking about our projects and sharing and giving critique and building on our projects. So that's been really wonderful as well. And there's a hopefully a novel, I think, or a novella that has developed as a result of that hopefully by this time next year that will have been finished and who knows, even published. But I'm trying not to think that far ahead. I just want to get this thing finished and we'll go from there. So
that's fun.
One of my highlights is I've started doing the thing. It's what I wanted to do. It's what I went to uni for, and it's been a journey of just forcing myself to make the time to do it.
Yeah, you have to
we all
prioritise.
Live such busy lives, so that's been one major highlight for me. There's another massive one that I think I'd be murdered by multiple people if I didn't mention. I got engaged. That's pretty cool.
Oh, clap track. Yes. Throw confetti. Can you do confetti and make it snow with confetti now?
Sure.
Make it go now. Oh, look at that. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's massive.
Yeah. So for people that don't know, because I'm generally pretty private with my own personal life, but me and my fiance were dating for 5 years, and on our 5th anniversary got engaged. So
amazing, isn't it?
This time next year we will have been married for about 6 months.
Oh, incredible. So we're about 6 months away from the wedding.
Give or take, yeah.
And it means that 2025 is going to be a countdown. Everything's going to be in and around.
Already is, mate.
Yeah. All the events, though, the lead-up events. And all the events that the bride does as well, and as the groom, it's just fever pitch, man.
Yeah.
Of locking in the diary and locking in the people, and it's such a happy time.
Yeah. It's interesting. I sort of thought to myself, because me and my fiance, we've been living together for over 3 years now.
Has it been 3 years?
Yeah, we moved in together at the end of 2021.
Wow.
And part of me was like, not that I wasn't at all dismissive of the idea of marriage, but I kind of didn't think that much would change in getting engaged, because we already live together, we already do life together, we're already
you're a great team.
We're a team already. But I'm really pleasantly surprised by how much our relationship has developed in ways that I don't think it was ever going to until we got engaged, and will only continue to, I'm sure, when we get married.
How special.
So that's been wonderful.
Thanks for sharing.
She doesn't listen to this, but
oh well, that's great. We can just shout out to her. We love her.
Yeah, she said to me, "Why would I listen to more of you? I get you 24 hours at home." It's fair enough. What about you, Ness? What are your highlights of the year?
I feel like I've got quite a few really great things. My personal highlights were probably uni. First semester, I did really well in a subject. And then second semester, I struggled. I had to do that thesis. I'm sure I've talked about it a lot.
Yeah, I remember we talked about it,
Yeah, I think having to self-direct my thesis was I found that really hard and very challenging to not answer a prescribed question. I had to come up with the question. And I found that tricky to come up with the question. I came up with a thought and an area of theology that I wanted to address, and then I had to kind of backfill the question after I'd started some preliminary research. I loved the reading. I loved the learning. I didn't like so much the writing. It's totally opposite, right?
Yeah.
I felt really offended when I literally said, not very humbly, but I'm sure I said it to you, and I know I said it to my daughter and my husband. I said, oh, you know the great thing about this? I'm going to hand this draft in to Ockett, and I have found my voice.
Yeah.
I have found my voice, and I am loving this. I am PhD material. I can do this. And Rob said, oh, well, it's excellent that you've found it now. And Aurora as well. Neither of them had read any of it, but they were just believing what I was saying because I believed it. So I hand in the draft and I say, it's only a draft, but can you just let me know if I'm in the right direction? And he came back far too quickly. He did say to me, have good work, Ness. I will have a read, have a very restful weekend.
Yeah.
And I'll be back in touch on Monday. What I since found out was he'd actually read it. He knew he was going to slam the crap out of me and he wanted me to have a restful weekend. So I got this sense of everything's going to be all right. And he told me, back to the drawing board, you great writing, but it's Simonic writing. And I remember going, I don't know that language. What's Simonic? It's, no, it's not Hebrew, it's not Aramaic, it's not Greek. What's Simonic? Where's Semania? Oh, I said, what's sermonic writing? He said, sermon writing, Vanessa. This is good for the pulpit. Well, at least you have 12,000 words that you can use in the pulpit to put everybody to sleep. And then he laughed, and I felt really hurt because I felt like I'd put my heart and soul into this thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, I wanted to kick and scream and have a tantrum and cry and go, I don't want to play in this sandpit anymore. I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to fail this subject and just start another subject next semester. Stuff it. And then Rob gave me the big speech, and Ginger, the lawyer, gave me the big speech, and Aurora, doing her master's, gave me a bigger speech and gave me the pep talk, and I started again, back to the drawing board. And it was probably one of the greatest things I've done because I built resilience because I didn't want to do it, Jonty. I was so upset and offended that I was so audacious that I said, oh, I found my voice. And he said, well, maybe, Ness, you're better off not following a career in academia. Maybe you should just write a book, babe. I said, yeah, probably. But anyway, handed in my paper. I got a credit. Had to be marked by an external marker from another uni. I got a credit. So I was
That's huge. Yeah.
pretty pleased, actually, given that it was a complete start again, and I did the next rewrite in like 5 weeks and the other had taken months. So it was a huge turnaround, and I feel very proud that I was able to achieve that and just get it done, And not all was lost because I did several sermons utilising the material of the initial draft, and that informed my practice as a minister. And I've got a plethora of information about Mary and Hannah. If anybody wants to know, shout out, give me a call. I'm happy to share my sermonic draft with you.
And who knows, next year you might have a book.
I might have a book, but it won't be about those girls.
Okay.
So that was probably a highlight and a low light for me.
One of the questions I wanted to ask for both of us is what have we learnt about ourselves? You kind of already then started to talk about that. Is there more there for you in terms of what that process taught you about yourself and how you've grown?
Yeah, because I've realised, and I don't know if it's because I am on drugs for anxiety, that I coped really well with that. And it didn't seem to cause anxiety. I just maybe it's the meds working really well, but I would often experience, even though I am on anxiety drugs, like what I'd call breakthrough anxiety. So I would have days, good days and bad days. If I was to rate them on a scale of anxious thinking and not anxious thinking. I would probably have a 50-50 anxious thinking days to non-anxious thinking days, but not want to increase my drugs to have no anxiety at all. Just seemed like enough. And interestingly, in the last couple of months, and I have gone and done a course online with an American organisation on healing, I have had very few moments of anxiety. And I've really tested my mettle in that on this trip to the US that we did. And I only had one moment that I felt a little bit anxious, and that was and I shared it on a previous podcast, where we were in Ohio and they can carry guns, and we'd parked our car at night time in a car park that was in a fairly dodgy part of town under the Paycor Stadium where the Bengals play, and there wasn't any people around except dodgy ones. And we had to walk in the rain back to our car. And I remember getting a tight chest and feeling stressed because Rob was stressed. And if Rob's stressed and it's his home motherland, then I needed to feel stressed. So I got stressed. But it was the only time that I felt that. And I thought, wow, I think I'm going to come off my drugs. So I've learnt something about myself that I think I've grown. My mental health resilience maybe. And found some strategies and new ways of thinking. And I'm going to wean off my medication.
Wow, that's huge.
Under the help of my GP, and I've spoken to her about that, and I've got the strategy ready to go. So I'm going to do that over the Christmas break. So I'm going to come back and probably be batshit crazy when I see you next. I don't think so. I think I'm going to be...
I reckon you got it.
Yeah, I'm just going to give it a crack, brother.
Yeah.
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 And knock some of this weight, this anxious food-eating body weight, which gives me the shits. So I'm really keen for next year.
Yeah, cool.
Yes, I've learned a bit about myself.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful.
What about you? Growth?
Yeah. I think probably similar to you. I think I surprised myself by how resilient I was this year. Having had some mental health issues in the past and still very much living with depression. And that's an ongoing, something I've very well equipped management strategies and very much on top of, but I don't think it's something that I'm ever going to, completely rid myself of. Losing a family member this year was
tough.
Really, really hard, but I surprised myself by how resilient I was in that. And I think largely that's because of a lot of the hard work I've done in the last sort of 4 or 5 years. A little bit like how COVID forced everyone to kind of reassess a lot of things. My own personal pandemic was like 5 years ago, going through a really rough period of mental health issues that forced me to build some really good strategies and resilience techniques that I think served me really well this year.
Amazing.
In a way that I wasn't necessarily cognizant of at the time. I think it's been long enough that I've been working on these things and trying to integrate them into my everyday life that something like that happens and I didn't have to stop and think about, okay, now I need to put this in place and this in place and then I need to practice this. It just kind of happened.
Organically.
And so with 6 months of in retrospect now, I can kind of look at it and go, oh wow, I did actually
survive that.
I was equipped to
pull yourself out
to deal with that. Yeah, and that doesn't at all minimize the deep grief that me and my family are still going through. But like for my own personal development this year, I was surprised myself by how resilient I was through that. If this had happened 5 years ago, which it could well have, for those who missed, I think I talked about it in an episode potentially, but my auntie passed away after 11 years with motor neuron disease and had been wheelchair bound for 5. Hadn't spoken since 2019 or 2018 actually. She decided to lengthen her life by the tracheal breathing apparatus, which meant that she was no longer able to communicate verbally since 2018. So it's been a long, drawn-out process that she could well have passed away 5 years ago. I don't know what the life expectancy is or the of a MND diagnosis is now, but last I heard or checked, it was like 3 years is the average.
She smashed it.
So she crushed it and was still pumping out research
to the end.
UCID and just like
what a woman.
An incredible role model. But yeah, like if she had passed away in 2019 or 2020, it could have been very different for me in how I'd managed that. So that was a lesson for me, I think, this year.
You know, when you were in the depths of depression years ago, did you ever take medication?
Yeah. I was on antidepressants for about a year.
Yeah, right.
There was very much I need to finish university. So talking to my GP, like, I'm just not coping. I need to drop out of uni or defer or do something because I just can't do this at the moment. And so we decided to do a trial run of antidepressants, and it helped. But for me, long term, it wasn't viable because it does that thing where it lifts your peak, lifts your low points, but it also flattens your high points.
Yeah.
So I was, on autopilot for about a year on antidepressants, and as soon as I sort of finished uni, graduated,
you could feel the highs and lows.
Yeah, made the decision to gradually go off them, which I did. Haven't been on them since. But they were incredibly helpful.
Yes.
And did exactly what we needed them to do.
Amazing.
So,
yeah. Incredible, Jonty. Well, I hope 2025 is a spanker for you and your new bride-to-be. Yeah, it's beautiful that you exude happiness and radiation of joy. I don't know if radiation is the right word, but radiate joy, definitely. And I've seen your happiness barometer be up high. So it's beautiful to see.
Yeah. Getting engaged definitely does that.
Oh, yeah, of course. It's so exciting.
Yeah.
What were your favourite things in 2024? Did you do, I know the engagement, we parked that. Now we need to do other things.
Sure.
Have you got any 2024 favourite things?
Well, I mean, if we talk about films, I'm just looking at my list here. There's a list of almost 100 films that were released this year that I've seen.
That you've seen?
Yeah.
A 100?
Yeah. So
at $20 a film.
Oh, less than that. When you're a member.
Yes.
But so like heaps of really, really amazing film that I saw this year. I mean, the big ones that people will know of, Dune Part 2 was phenomenal.
I want to know why, though. Why was it phenomenal?
Dune Part 2. Well, so do you know anything about Dune?
No.
So Dune, really important and famous science fiction novel from the 1960s. So it's pre-Star Wars. Best I can describe it is Game of Thrones in space. So there's different houses. There's an empire with an emperor, but instead of in Westeros, it's in space, set in the future when space travel is a thing. Notoriously like complex and mature as a novel. So it's very, very tricky. Like I remember the first time I tried to read the book when I was 12, it took me 4 attempts to get past the first 100 pages because it's so dense. Before each chapter, there are excerpts from in-universe history that don't give you any definitions for what words or terms mean. And there's stuff in book 1 in the history book excerpts that don't get referenced in world again until book 3 or 4. So you've really got to just come to terms with, I'm not going to understand everything that I'm reading, and you just got to push through. It's a big 600-page book. Dune Part 1 came out in 2021 and did a really, really good job of setting up all the chess pieces. But it was kind of great. You set that up. Are you going to be able to land the plane with Dune Part 2? And
they did.
They smashed it out of the park. And
wow.
it's a really fascinating story about, particularly to look at it as a Christian, because it's about prophecy and Messiah. So really briefly, because Dune is an incredibly complex and nuanced story that people have written books about, literally.
Can I ask you, is Dune a place, a person, or a thing?
So there's a planet called Arrakis on which there is a resource called spice, which is what enables space travel. That planet is obviously where everyone wants, whoever controls that planet controls the economy, controls everything, is colloquially known
as Dune.
Known as Dune. So that's just another word for so it's a place.
Oh, interesting.
The main character finds himself in the position of being potentially the quote-unquote chosen one, the Messiah, to free the indigenous people of Dune.
Whew.
But the story is a critique of Messiah tales because I'm so brief. This requires a whole episode really, but there's a group of witches, I guess you'd call them, that are called the Bene Gesserit, that have been planting prophecies in cultures across millennia to build Messiah stories and then breeding potential Messiahs. So the people who... Paul is wrestling with the fact that he knows that it's all made up, but to the indigenous people, that doesn't matter.
No.
And maybe it doesn't matter if it is made up, because if they believe it, then it's real. And Dune Messiah, which is going to be the third film, which is the second novel, really underlines that Paul is not a hero. Paul is a young man who has decided to play into this false prophecy narrative.
Whoa.
And that it isn't a good thing. So it's a critique of the Luke Skywalker, the hero, the chosen one, the Harry Potter, the whatever. Like, take your pick of all the chosen one narratives. It's a critique of how that narrative is actually damaging and is used to hold people under power.
Gosh, I need to go and see that.
So it's incredibly complex and has lots of really interesting theological things that you can pull out of it, but it has so much you can talk about in terms of colonialism and empire and things like that. And so across part 1, which came out in 2021, and part 2, which came out this year, part 2 is 2 hours and 50 minutes. Part 1's like 2.5 hours. So it's like over 5 hours. And which for a novel that long and that complex is the only way they could have done it. It's a big popcorn science fiction spectacle movie. Like it's definitely a blockbuster type film.
Wow.
But it's got all of this complexity and amazing filmmaking in it.
Well, thank you for the review, because I now need to see that.
Please
Everyone
do.
in my family has and loves it.
Yeah.
So I need to do that.
If you've got maybe over January.
Yeah.
Don't have all the time in the world, but we've got a little bit of time to...
Definitely.
If I'm
not studying.
Spare weekend, chuck it on.
It's good.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I'd love to hear what you think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you?
Favourite, I had a couple of things. I moved home this year and in the middle of the year, and I really love our new home. It's so lovely, and I just feel very content for one of the first times in my life in where I live. Normally we buy a home and we reno them, we flip them, we make money, we buy the next home. Rob and I have been doing that since we were married. And this time it feels a bit like our forever place. We did a big downsize, and so it's going to serve us as we get older. It's really cool. Got a lovely view, and it's just, I feel safe there, and it feels like home to me. I haven't felt that for a long time. So that feels really cool. That was a great thing this year. That was in the middle of the year.
Yeah. That's gone so quickly. It feels like you moved like a month ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Rob's mum died, and with some inheritance, long story, he went and bought himself a badass Harley Davidson and named her Ruth after his grandma. And he loves it so much. Watching Rob on his Harley makes me really happy that he's so happy. He doesn't want to buy a car. he only ever wants to ride a bike. He said, cars are lame. You can have a car, but I don't want a car. So I love that. I love this year, just last Friday, my daughter Aurora finished her master's. Yes, I know. She finished and she's now a speech pathologist and starts her job in January as a speechy, and she is so excited and I'm so proud of her.
Congrats, Link. That's
yeah,
awesome.
I know. It made me really happy for her that I'm watching her on the pinnacle of starting life after 6 years at uni. And now launching into life, and she's talking about getting a new car and saving up for a holiday and starting her life. So she's super pumped. She's super pumped to have money.
Aren't we all?
Yeah, that's right, because she's been broke for years. I saw some theatre this year.
Yeah, tell me about that.
I've got these two girlfriends, Nikki and Helen, and we book theatre throughout the year. We just have them in the bank and we're ready to go when they roll out. And this year, something that I loved, and I saw it twice, was Sunset Boulevard. I got such a shock at the story because I didn't know the story. So I gasped and yelled out when the story happened.
Do you know, I don't know if you know what Letterboxd is, but it's like social media for movies.
Right.
And they make you, they don't make you, but on your profile you can pick 4 favourite movies that are displayed. Sunset Boulevard is one of them for me.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I love it. It's the best.
But I didn't know it was a tragedy, Jonty. I had no idea. And so it shocked me. I didn't know whether I was pissed off or how I felt about it at the end. So I went back and saw it a second time. And then I saw things that I didn't see the first time. And I ended up having all this empathy for the lead character. And, I just felt, I cried. I absolutely sobbed. I found myself leaping out of my seat at the end and giving Sarah Brightman a standing ovation, and I just felt so sad.
Have you seen the film?
No.
Oh, you need to see the film.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it? Oh.
You'll love it.
Similar? Would it be similar,
Well, I haven't seen the play, but I imagine.
Yeah, excellent. So I then go off to New York, and I've recently come back and I saw the Radio City Rockets, which was a dream of mine ever since ever. And that was just spectacular. It was everything you can possibly imagine. It was New York City, USA, at its all-time best. And they put on an absolute Christmas spectacular. Dancing, high kicks, full Jesus manger thing with camels, live real camels on this massive stage. And it was just beautiful. I was captivated. Cried when it was over because I didn't want it to end. It was just so beautiful.
Yeah.
And then the night after that, I went and saw The Great Gatsby, which is on Broadway, and it's a musical, and it will be coming to Sydney in about 4 years. So I thought, I don't know much about Gatsby's story. I'll go and see it. I knew it's set in the 20s. Oh, Jonty, it's a tragedy.
Yeah.
It's a tragedy also. So I sat there.
It's almost like the American Dream's bullshit.
Bullshit. It was just, I was so upset.
Yeah.
Because I was expecting dun, 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 dun.
And that is
and it's
in
all
there.
in it.
Yeah.
Like 100%.
Yeah.
Great dancing. It had pyrotechnics. It had the whole shebang. Great costuming, beautiful singing, all of the thing. But the ending, brother, I went, oh, my Lord, I am done with these tragic, bloody stage productions. So now I've got tickets to Jesus Christ Superstar.
I'm sure he's going to be fine.
He'll be just fine.
Nothing's going to happen to him.
Nothing awful's going to happen in that. It's going to be like Netflix Christmas show, isn't it? I don't know how that one ends.
It's interesting as well you mentioned Gatsby, because you're just picking gold here, because it's one of my favourite novels, and the final line in that novel, which I was telling you about before, is just like the most beautifully written thing I've ever. Fitzgerald's just was a genius with the English language. But the final line of the novel, The Great Gatsby, is, "And so we beat on, boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past." Isn't that just like the best thing you've ever heard? It's just like, there's a beauty to the language, but it's so sad.
It's so sad. It was so, I cried, and at the end, I everybody's standing and clapping and doing ovations. I was so shocked and so upset that I just had to get up and walk out at the end. I clapped a bit and then I just went, I'm just got to get over this. I was so sad.
Have you read the novel?
No.
Have you seen, because there's a Baz Luhrmann film with Leo DiCaprio as Gatsby.
I have seen that, but I don't think this is similar.
Okay.
But I wonder, it must be.
If it's
Does
an
he
adaptation
die
of the... Yeah.
in the movie?
That's the story, yeah.
I don't know how I didn't know that. Neither Rob and I knew that.
Right.
And it just...
It's a tragedy.
The whole bunch of them die. It was awful.
Yeah.
It was really sad. Anyway, I can't believe I picked that of all things to go and see on Broadway. But Jesus Christ Superstar, that'll be great. That's in Sydney at the moment.
Nothing bad's going to happen to Jesus.
No, Jesus is going to be just fine. He was born in a manger. He's going to be just fine.
The only other thing I want to shout out is another movie that I saw, and the reason I want to shout it out is I reckon not many people have seen it.
Yeah.
Is a film called I Saw the TV Glow. Have you heard of this one?
No.
So I think I talked about it to Odd Rev on, it might have been on his podcast, might have been on this one, I can't remember, but it's essentially a teen coming of age movie, but the whole thing is a metaphor for, and I went down this rabbit hole of learning all of this new terminology because it's new to me, but the transgender experience of the egg crack moment. Have you heard of this?
Oh, no.
So I will obviously say I'm not transgender, so take everything I say with a grain of salt when talking about this, but the egg crack moment being the moment when you suddenly realise that you can't go back. So like you can't like the Humpty Dumpty thing, you can't put an egg back together.
Yeah.
And so it's this teen, almost science fiction, horror-esque thing where it's this story about a kid who grows up and has memories of watching this TV show as a kid, that the whole thing is an allegory for growing up and when that egg crack moment happens. And it is so good and a testament to why I think film in particular, but stories in general, are so important. Not just powerful and cool, but like I actually think they're vital to the human experience, is sharing stories. It's because I'm not trans, it expressed something to me about the trans experience that I had heard but hadn't understood.
How amazing.
And watching I Saw the TV Glow, I suddenly, it felt like I got it for the first time in a way that you can only get if you're not trans by being either in deep relationship
with someone
who you can go through that with, or a film like that just cuts through all intellectualism and goes straight to the emotional part of it. So if people, I imagine lots of people probably haven't even heard of it because it was a fairly small indie movie. But if you have a chance, I highly recommend I Saw the TV Glow.
Thank you, Jonty.
Yeah.
Definitely. I've got this list of things to see over Christmas. Can I share another favourite thing that
please.
I didn't think was going to be a favourite thing, that's really recent favourite thing, and I was actually wishing I'd never said yes to? Have you ever had one of those experiences?
Definitely, yeah. Oh. All the time.
So Reverend Brother John Humphreys said to me,
Friend of the show.
Yeah, Ness, let's do a pulpit swap. And I went, oh, that sounds like a great idea. I don't know what was going on for me that day. But I said, yeah, okay, that's great. Let's do that. He said, yeah. I said, oh, you'll be great at Woollahra. They love you there. So it wasn't going to be tricky for John because he's preached there many times. Rachel, his daughter, is worship leader there. It's a safe landing for John. I said, so what about, tell me about your congregation. He said, well, you'll have to do the 2 services, one at 8 o'clock and then one at 9:30. I said, oh, yeah, that's okay, no problem. Can I say the same sermon? He said, yeah, no problem. Just the orders of service might be a bit different, which they were, no problem. Anyway, as I'm building up to getting prepared for this thing that I've got to do there, I was thinking, why did I ever say yes to this thing? This is awful.
You feel like cough coming on.
Surely I'm
feeling
not
a bit sick.
well.
Sorry, guys.
This is terrible. And John's all really excited. My congregation at Woollahra are really pumped to have John. They're probably excited just to get rid of me for a week, hear another voice, hear a male voice. And then I go to Woollahra, to Bulco, and I'm met with such affection by the first congregation. And they were so warm and so kind and very accepting of me. And I had the most interesting experiences there. very different demographic to what I've got at Wallara, and lots more people. So that was new for me, quite novel for me to experience that. But the interesting thing is, I think when people become really familiar with you, like my congregation is at Wallara, they stop telling you how you're going, only unless there's something really bad. Unless I've said something really dodgy, they'll let me know. But the rest of the time they say nothing. They don't comment. They don't want to have a conversation with me about what I've said. It's really, and I've got used to it.
Yeah.
I've just got used to it. So then at Balco though, I was busting for a wee and really wanted a cup of coffee before the next thing.
Yeah.
And I never really got a chance to do either of those because I had so many people wanting to chat to me and talk about what I'd said. And they remembered things that I said. And then they and I didn't even realise I said that. And then it was really, I felt, you know what? I think it was so lovely. I felt really affirmed as a minister. It was really nice. And they said, whether or not John paid them to say that or not, I don't know. But they said, would you come back again? And I said, oh, I would love to. We'll have to check in to see how Rev Brothers feels about going back to Wallara, but I would love to do that. Come back another time because it was really fun. Thanks for being so kind. Yes, it was I would say that was a real highlight in my ministry life, and obviously something God thought that I needed to, an experience I needed.
That's great.
Yeah, it was. It was really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, from if we're talking shop.
Well, and that probably takes us nicely to this podcast.
Yeah,
I thought it'd be nice
guests.
to have a look at like what our standout moments this year were. If you've got the pulpit, we've got the podcast.
Yeah.
Do any stand out to you as being
so many
particularly fantastic?
You know the thing, as we were looking at the list, I went, oh my God, was that this year? Oh, was that this year?
Yeah, we've had 26 guests on this year.
Extraordinary. And
27 actually if you include Corey last week.
Yeah, so. You know what I love? I love the guests.
Yeah.
I love a conversation because I love to hear somebody else's story and their lens. I love to hear about what they're doing in the world and how they hit the grace spaces and how do they do be the hands and feet of Christ into the community. I love it. And so I just, any guest that we have on, I just feel so in awe of their story and always want to have them back a second time.
Yeah.
Because I know that we only just scratched the surface. One we did recently was with the moderator.
Yeah.
And Marta, I don't know Marta as a friend. I know her as a distance and attending functions that she's at but I've never been her friend just because we're not in those same circles. And to have her in our studio, she was just so gracious and so humble, and her life story sounds epic. And in our podcast, we just didn't even go deeply with her, and I'm so busting to have her on next year to hear more about her story as a single mum and her stories of struggles, which she alluded to, and I'm busting to know more about her because there's a depth and breadth to that woman that I was unaware of that has obviously shaped her ministry, her very powerful ministry as to be moderator of New South Wales ACT. Yeah. What about you?
I mean, that episode, possibly recency bias because a couple of weeks ago, but that definitely sticks out to me as being a standout. In the same way that Simon Hansford's episode, previous moderator, it's something about moderators. They just share really, really powerful messages. Really earlier, like it came out in, I'm just looking at the list, early February we did a double episode with AJ Rochester. Oh, which
wasn't that a doozy?
Completely out of left field for a lot of people, I think. Their feedback was like, I wouldn't have, like if you had given me 1,000 guesses at who your next guest on the show was going to be, we wouldn't have picked that.
And can I just tell you that she was at an event recently with Jodie Foster.
Yeah.
And there's a picture of AJ and Jodie at this event and she posted on her social media. And she also just recently won an award for Best Reality Show in the US.
Oh, wow.
And so because she's a shout out to her casting agent and she smashed it, and I loved watching all her all her social media on that. I'm really proud of her.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's good stuff, isn't it? Yeah.
And if people miss that one, AJ's got a fascinating story. We split it into two parts because the first part really largely being about her parents and that story about being adopted and finding her biological mother, and that in itself is an incredible story. And then in part two, we talked about most Australians will probably know her from early seasons of The Biggest Loser, and that experience and people that have followed The Biggest Loser will know from a public facing perspective how that played out. But hearing her side of that
and
story
being fat shamed,
and bullied, and
it's really
that industry being pretty crazy. So
she's got a good story. But all our guests have a great story, and I think that's what I love. It's the human element. It's understanding somebody else's life and trying to hop into a pair of moccasins and walk with them as they share their story. I really enjoy that. What about the one we did with Taylor?
He's fantastic. Yeah.
He's like, it's when I think about these people, they've all got big stories and overcoming major adversity.
Yeah, and I think that story for me particularly resonated. His story about being a young Australian male around drinking culture resonated with me so deeply, being myself a young male who grew up around drinking culture.
Of course.
That really resonated with me and left me with lots of things to ponder and think about. Again, another two-parter. We couldn't get him to shut up.
I
so
know.
we had 2 hours
such
on
a
it.
deep story.
Yeah.
And a bit of a, are we allowed to say that we're having him on next year as one of our guests?
Yes, we are.
A live
so
event?
that'll be, we don't have a location for that one yet, but and we'll talk more about this at the end of this episode, our live shows for next year. But Taylor will be in Sydney.
With his car.
In the middle of the year.
Yeah, so excited.
So
that's going to be so good.
Keep an eye out for when that date and location drops, because we're so excited. Because I've also only ever met him on Zoom when we did the recording, so it'd be awesome to hang out in the same room as him and check out his car and hear more of his story. I think it's going to be really exciting. Yeah.
Dr. Julie Fletcher, remember that one?
Fascinating.
Again, two-piece.
Another two-parter.
Yeah.
That was pretty.
It's a big story.
Amazing.
Her life story. And again, it's an overcoming adversity thing, isn't it? And mental health and managing life in ministry. She's a powerhouse. Yeah. Then there was the Renucci's.
We've had both of them on this year.
I know.
Yeah.
They're both their stories.
Yeah. Do you want me to I can just blast through actually the whole list of guests we have, and just so any of these that people go, I know that person, I haven't heard that episode, go back and check them out, because all our guest episodes this year were incredible.
They're powerful.
Will Small, who, again, live shows next year, more at the end of this episode about that, but we'll be hanging out with Will Small from Spiritual Misfits. We had Will, we had AJ, we had Catherine Garner, we had Pastor Richard LeBroy, we had my dad to talk about Life of Brian and Easter narratives, Taylor, Andrew Renucci, Marion Street. We had Gabby and McCarley from Marion Street talk about their music, which was incredible. Alison from Southeast Community Connect.
She was great.
Odd Rev's been on twice. Mike Frost was incredible. Julie Fletcher. Karen Mitchell-Lambert. We had our live show in the middle of the year where we had Reverend Dr. Peter Powell, Reverend Phil Swain, Pastor Joyce Tungy and Pastor Somerset Drayton on a panel.
Incredible.
So good.
Yes.
If you haven't checked out that, go back and check it out. Karina Kraminsky, Rev Loffer, Monique from the Healing Trauma podcast, Summer again, Carol Renucci, I think we already said that one, Odd Rev again, James Watson, we had on for another two-parter, Kelly Woods, Reverend Dr. Peter Powell, like we said, Rev Marta, and Corey, who was on last week.
Incredible.
It's just, and all of those guest episodes are amazing.
Yeah.
We're just so thankful for all of those people for giving their time and being happy to come and chat to us.
Yeah, very grateful. I think the thing that always staggers me is when we do a podcast that's just you and me and we have a topic of what we're going to talk about, or we're going to review something, or a piece of scripture or whatever it is, and we get a lot of action on socials. And I think that one we did on forgiveness, I had no idea what kind of conversation that was going to produce on the socials.
Yeah.
It was quite epic, wasn't it?
of the non-guest episodes, that's one that had a particular, from feedback that I got from our listeners, was a particularly well-received one. So much so that, like, you know, that as a topic has come up in conversation multiple times on the podcast since then. So people who've listened to these episodes will remember we picked this up again in our episode with Reverend Dr. Peter Powell a couple of weeks ago. James Watson and I really dug deep on some of that stuff as well, and why forgiveness feels like a burden for the person who has to do the forgiving. People really resonated with that. An amazing conversation, and I'm sure he'll be okay with me sharing. I won't share any detail, but our friend Jack, who's also been on the show a couple of years ago, sharing how that episode just opened up so much stuff for him personally in his own situation that actually had a really profound effect on his own stuff going on in his life. So, and that's just one of a number of people that reached out. So thank you for being, because I know that was a very, very vulnerable episode for you in your story.
Well, I didn't realise that. I thought I was maybe the only asshole that had trouble with forgiveness. And I was kind of doing confessional in a sense in saying that I want to be better. I really want to be better at this. Lord, kind of help me because I'm struggling with this. And so just fleshing out authentically what I really feel about forgiveness.
Yeah.
But can you say that line that you said to me earlier today about forgiveness and what Peter Powell said?
Oh, that's right. And this is paraphrase again because I edited this a couple of weeks ago, so I can't remember off the top of my head specifically, but it was something along the lines of, we feel the need to have to forgive people when often we just don't let the forgiveness of Jesus do the forgiving. And he's just like, if you want to go and nail yourself to the back shed and do it again, feel free. But Jesus already did it, mate. Like,
That's right.
But then we were talking about this earlier, and that actually comes in conflict a little bit with some of the teachings of Jesus. And I'm not saying that these cancel each other out. It's a both and.
Yeah.
One of these tension things that we have to hold.
Because he tells us to forgive.
He tells us to forgive.
Yeah.
It's in the Lord's Prayer. Help us to forgive others as you've forgiven us.
So obviously for all of life, humans have struggled with this concept of forgiving one another.
Yeah. And I think something for me that I learned and developed my own kind of personal stuff in these conversations was in being a chronic people pleaser. I had this image of forgiveness being that everyone had to be friends again and make amends and go back to the way things were.
Yeah, so did I.
But forgiving someone doesn't mean you ever have to see them again.
Praise God.
Hallelujah. You know, forgiving someone is as much about you. And there's that Nadia Boltz-Weber quote that we used in that episode, that forgiveness is like wielding bolt cutters to the chains that chain you to assholes.
That's right.
That, you know, it just
cut it off.
If it's living rent free in your own head, chances are the other person hasn't even thought about it.
Yes.
Once you forgive them, you're free. You don't have to think about it ever again.
Yeah.
You don't have to hang out with them again. You don't have to see them at that function. You don't have to go to that family thing. You don't have, whatever it is, you don't actually have to see them again if it's not safe, if that thing isn't healed, if there isn't any sign of reparation, if there isn't any sign that they're taking responsibility for anything.
Yeah.
You forgiving them doesn't then have to lead to any of those things.
Yeah.
It's just about you forgiving them.
It's interesting, you know.
Yeah.
I never forgave Mick, one of the perpetrators in my own story, and he died. I don't feel anything about that. It's like flatline.
It's out of your...
It's not
your business.
It's not my business.
Yeah.
It did... I don't know if it would have been any better for me to forgive him. It's nothing now. He's dead, mate.
Interesting. Yeah.
Dead.
Yeah. Not your problem.
No, mate. I'm just waiting for the next one to go down. It's going to be Champs. It's going to be Champs. Always got a bottle in the fridge ready.
I can hear the phone line, so to speak, going
Can I tell you,
now.
can we do a podcast on that when that happens?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's something that a lot of people, myself included, find quite challenging. So that'd be really interesting to dig into.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a bunch of other episodes that we did, just the two of us, that stand out to me. Like I really loved the Do I Stay Christian episodes.
We did a couple, didn't we?
That book's next to your head still, I think. So we should. There's a third episode there in the can that we haven't recorded yet, waiting, about So the first section and episode we did was about reasons not to.
Yep.
Second episode, reasons why you should stay Christian. And then the third section of the book, which we never got to as an episode, is so then how do you do it? Integrating some of the very real things in the no section into how to actually continue practicing a Christian faith when there are plenty of good reasons not to.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
if people are interested in hearing that, we're more than happy to crack that book open again next year and have a go through that.
Next year I'm doing a subject at uni. It's a practical theology subject.
Yeah.
It's on sin, death and repentance.
Interesting.
I know. I am going to have content.
Yeah.
Got 4 new books to read over summer and I'm going to have content for us, Jonty. Get ready. I think it's going to be hot and alive.
Awesome. We have a couple of questions maybe that we could get into. We'll see how we go. We might only get through one of them for time.
Give it a crack.
This one is from Julie, who we mentioned before.
Fletch. Love her.
How you going? Thanks for sending in the question.
Go, sis.
We shoot messages back and forth on the Instagram every once in a while as well. So Julie asks, why do we define ourselves by a narrow theology rather than just owning up to being eclectic? It's interesting because my initial response to that is actually in the Uniting Church. I feel like that's one of our, not weaknesses, but potentially one of our, certainly a defining characteristic is that by definition, the Uniting Church doesn't have a narrow theological framework. And as an example, the Uniting Church's stance on same-sex marriage is affirming of both and or all stances. Mm-hmm. So if you are an affirming Christian and you think that queer people can and should be allowed to get married, there is a Uniting Church for you.
Yep.
If you're a non-affirming person, there's a Uniting Church for you.
Yeah.
So there's actually space within there for differing theologies.
And I know we cop shade from the Anglicans and the Baptists for our breadth of theological positioning.
Yeah.
But I think it's a strength.
I agree.
In our church, I really do. I think it's a convoluted strength, but I think it's most definitely a strength.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to be a part of that movement.
Yeah.
100%.
I think though...
Because I always get nervous, Jonty, about Christians that are so sure what they think is the truth. And because they have visited God recently and they just know what the truth is and everybody else doesn't. So I wish them well. Good luck with that. Hope that serves you well.
Yeah.
But I think our eclectic, as Fletch says, and that's what I'm assuming she's meaning, is a strength.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
The question about why we define ourselves by a narrow theology, though, I think is actually quite interesting, because even though our movement, the Uniting Church, is quite diverse and quite eclectic, I do think that there is still, that what that means is when we gather, we're not quite sure how to put language around that, and so we tend to just default into quite narrow liturgy and language in our bigger gatherings. So I think there is actually something in there, and like, how do we better represent the diversity and how eclectic we are theologically as a movement, not within our congregational spaces, because I think by and large, like I said, depending on your, other than, Jesus Christ being our Lord and Saviour and the death and resurrection, pretty key to all Christian faith, bit of an understatement. There are things like that are concrete, right?
Yep.
Even though, spoiler alert, there's an episode coming, I think, next week with Thomas J. Odd, who questions that. So go and listen to that next week. But yeah, like, so within our congregations, there is definitely room for, like, if you're more, like, if you're affirming, there's churches for you. If there's non-affirming, there's churches for you. If you're a bit more orthodox, there's a church for you. If you're a bit more progressive, there's a church for you.
Yeah.
But it's when all of those things come together in things like whether it's Synod or Aurora or things like the big...
Even presbytery
Even
meetings.
presbyteries, yeah. That's when that...
Gets juicy.
because it's difficult, we default to a more narrow
Yes.
expression of language.
Yeah, we do, don't we?
So
yeah.
there's room to
Cool.
grow there. So it's an
Yeah,
interesting.
definitely.
Yeah. I reckon we've got time for one more.
Okay.
This is from Jenny. She asks, what is our role in making Christ known and not getting in Christ's way? And what does that look like? Part of the thinking is that the church in the West used to be a solid pathway. A huge proportion of people attended. It was the norm, quote unquote. But we now have so much skepticism and so much misunderstanding both within but particularly outside the church. So in a world where the church is no longer the norm, it's not the case that everyone goes to church. What is our role in making Christ known in the world? I think speaking as the church, and how do we do that?
I think it's more important than it's ever been, particularly if we're on the outside now. I think
Big time.
We need to profess the good news every opportunity we can get.
Yeah.
So times like Christmas, where even the shopping centres are doing our biting for us. You know, Westfields has baby Jesus in a manger. Even Stockland Mall has a crappy baby in a manger. So the narrative's being told throughout our country. We need to capitalise on that stuff. And we need to be examples of the good news in and through our communities. We need to spread peace and love and joy to people that need peace and love and joy. We need to not just go and worship in the building on a Sunday. We need to be the hands and feet in the community. And we need to harness all of that and get out there and do that. And I don't mean just by Bible bashing people over the head, because that doesn't serve God. That's getting in God's way,
100%.
that kind of behaviour.
Yeah.
But by being practical examples of Christ's love to people in the community that least expect it, I think doing that on behalf of our risen Lord, then get the fuck out of the way. You should probably edit that. Just get out of the way. Just do the love, be the peace, then let God be God. Don't try and bash them into coming to church or the next step. Just let God do what God needs to do in that person's life and that person's time.
Yeah.
Because we can try and over-orchestrate, can't we?
Yeah.
We really can. I'm guilty of that.
So am I.
You know, we do, but we just need to, I think there's nothing better than a hot living example of Christ's love in the community. That's a sexy message. It is.
Yeah.
When you see that, don't you go, man, that's a nice person. Wonder why they're like that.
The question about the church's place,
Yeah.
to me is really interesting, because when you look at where Christianity started, where followers of Jesus started, it wasn't in the dominant cultural expression of like church in the 90s or the 60s even. Like, it was a fringe group who were risking their lives
Weren't they?
to start a movement.
Yeah.
And so it's easy to look at the way that the Western church and the church in Australia, for example, has gone in the last 50 years, where it's gone from just everyone went to church and that was normal, to where it is now, where more and more and more people, the nuns, as is known, the people that tick none in the religious affiliation in the census, is on the rise. It's actually, if you look at the recent stats, it's flattened, which is interesting. It's easy to look at that and feel despair and kind of go, what's the church's place? The church, for me, has always been secondary to following Jesus.
It's not. That's just a place.
And that's not to say that we need to just sell all our church buildings, because the gathered community is vital.
Yeah.
Is vital to the life and witness of the followers of Jesus in the world. But it's when we start to look at that potentially shrinking and or changing as it is, as equating that to the downfall of the faith, I kind of go, no, you missed the point.
Yeah.
You've missed the point. Rightfully so, a whole bunch of people have started looking at institutional church movements and going, not sure about that.
Yeah.
Does that mean we need to stop following Jesus? Does that mean that the Spirit has stopped moving? Does that mean that less people are having their lives changed by Jesus? Absolutely not.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, absolutely not. In the same way that the early church was an illegal movement that didn't have church buildings. They didn't have,
it, brother.
the synagogues were there, but like they were meeting in people's homes.
Yeah.
under like worrying that they were going to get
busted
by the Romans
Yeah.
until that changed with Constantine. I can't remember
wife.
that dude's name.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. What's our role in making Christ known? Like, regardless of whether we're doing it in big church buildings with 300 people or a home with 15, to me there isn't a difference in how effective that is in changing people's lives with the gospel. Like,
an example of being the hands and feet of Christ in the community, and I feel like I say it a lot, is we're in a position where we offer that free counselling to people in need. I just think that is the love of God, because that's rare to get a $350 counselling session for nothing. That's an unusual offering, and it's being done because we love Jesus and we want to see you healed.
yeah,
Right? I think the simple thing that not every church has the money to do that, so we are blessed, but we are using it wisely and well to be able to bless those in need in our community. But another more simple thing that we did was have this petting zoo the other day at church, and we don't expect anything from anybody. There's no, we are going to do this for you, we expect it, you'll now do this for us. It's not an exchange. This is not a transactional relationship. It is, we want to bless our community and our little kids at Christmas time. And so we put on this extravagant event of petting zoo and icy poles and popcorn and fairy bread and bloody Prosecco and cheese platters and salmon and crackers for the mums and dads, and we just go all out, and lots of craft stations and great music led by our team, and they love it. And the people don't come to church that we're doing this for. My congregation and my congregation kids weren't there, but the community came. And the overarching message from them was, thank you so much for doing this for us. We see you. We know what you stand for. And isn't that's generous hospitality. Jesus tells us to be hospitable people and to love on one another. That's all we've got to do. And we just do it. And if people say, why do you do it? We say, because Jesus said that's a really cool thing for us to do. So I hope you feel blessed and loved, because that's why we're doing it. And if you need me for anything, I'm here.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's because I think once people know that you are safe and available,
Yeah.
that opens up all sorts of things. A family member dies, family members getting married, someone's going through a crisis and needs spiritual guidance. Who do I go to? Oh, there's that church up the road that just welcomed us. They didn't even know who we were, and they just were really hospitable and didn't try and force us into anything. They just gave to us.
I don't know what a good example I was that day, Jonty, because I had this interaction with a group of people, and we had fairy bread. We were doing fairy bread eating competitions. So we had little triangles of fairy bread, massive trays full of sprinkles. And so you take the triangle, you dump it in the sprinkle, and ready, set, go, shove it in your face.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was so cool. So we had we were all doing it together, and I was saying ready, set, go. And then one lady standing next to me who I'd never met before, she said, isn't this the funnest thing? This is so great. I loved fairy bread when I was a child, and she was my vintage. I love fairy bread. I said, I love fairy bread too. She said, isn't this the coolest thing that a church would do this? I said, I know, this church is really cool. She said, do you come here? And I said, yeah, I do. And she said, oh, what's it like? I said, oh, well, it's pretty cool. She said, what do you do here? I said, I'm the minister. As I've got a mouthful of sprinkles, and I've got sprinkles dripping down my chin, and I'm trying to swallow it and not choke. And she pissed herself laughing, and she said, that's really cool. And I wanted to launch into a sales pitch. But I didn't.
No, just get back into your fairy
bread. I
bread.
Get ready, set, go, and we shoved another one in.
That's awesome.
It was, I suppose, just by being normal and real.
Yeah.
We don't have weirdo things on our heads. We're just normal people, and we just love this risen baby Jesus thing.
Yeah.
Come and give it a crack. That's it. If you want to.
Yeah. What are we doing next year?
So much, brother.
Yeah. Do you want to tell them about some of our live shows that we got coming up?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So 23rd of Feb, I think I've got that date right. If I haven't, you'll see the links down below because the regos are open for that. Friend of the show, Will Small.
Woohoo!
Also from Spiritual Misfits. And
It's gonna be a good combo.
Future Church Conference and all that stuff. At Taramara Uniting at Evolve, their evening service at 6 p.m. on February 23rd.
Great.
Come and hang out with us there. If you can't make that one, come and hang out with us on the 6th of April at John Humphrey's place at
St. Matt's.
St. Matt's in Baulkham Hills. 6th of April, also at 6 p.m. in the evening.
Perfect.
With Dr. Ali Robinson as the guest speaker.
New Testament theologian.
That's right. In conversation with her actually soon about what we're going to be covering in that episode.
We've got to ask her all the Jesus
event.
questions.
So it's going to be really interesting. I sat in on a lecture of hers comparing the differences and seeming contradictions across the four Gospels, which was fascinating. So, and she's incredibly personable and exciting to listen to.
Can't wait.
The sort of person you go, I can't understand how you are so intelligent and so well spoken, but also so easy to listen to.
Yeah, she's fun.
She's fantastic.
Yeah.
And then, like we said, in the middle of the year in June, our friend Taylor Forward, Small Town Drifter, is going to be in Sydney.
Bringing his car.
Yeah. We're going to do at least 2 shows after that in August and October, possibly even, we haven't got this far yet, but possibly even a December show. All the details for those will be on our website down below. Check out all the links. Will be on the socials as well. These events are all free.
Super fun.
So come along to those. We're going to continue into the Word as well. We didn't even mention that. We launched a second podcast this year.
I know.
How crazy is that?
That was crazy. I was really scared about that.
Yeah.
Ended up being a great blessing.
Yeah.
I really enjoy doing that one.
Yeah. Listeners will have seen that those episodes have started popping up on the Filthy Hope feed.
Yeah.
We just decided it was going to be easy to consolidate both of those shows on the same feed. They're on the same YouTube channel anyway. Those episodes in the new year I've continued to upload them on both, but in the new year they will no longer be uploaded on the Into the Word feed. They'll just be uploaded on this feed.
Amazing.
On a Wednesday. People have been asking me, how can we support you? Because we have a Patreon. It's not active. There's nothing on it. We don't have any members on there. But people, and I'm so reticent to ask for people's money or support but people have been asking me, and this is, I'm forcing myself to do this at the end of the year here, is people ask, how can we support? A big part of what we do is prayer. Yeah. So if people want to pray for us and the ministry that we do at Filthy Hope, that would be gratefully appreciated. A really easy way people can support what we do is, whether you're on Spotify or YouTube or Apple Podcasts, is by subscribing or by leaving a 5-star review. The reviews are massive, and given how many listeners we have versus how many reviews we have, if 5% of our listeners left a 5-star review, that would make a massive difference for us.
Shoot us up higher.
Absolutely. So if you've got a couple of minutes spare, write up a nice little, even, something, making fun of us for something. I don't care. Just chuck something up. That would make a massive difference. And if you're listening and you're someone that thinks that you want to support us financially, shoot us an email, filthyhopepod@gmail.com. There's also, of course, the Patreon set up at $5 a month. There are no perks in there at the moment, but if you do want to support us financially, that's another way you can do that. Everything that you give through that will just go straight back into the mission here. So
100%.
I got that out of the way because people had been saying, you don't ask people to support you enough.
Yeah, that's good.
Because literally when people ask, like, so do you have a production team? No, it's pretty DIY. And literally DIY, we do it ourselves.
Yes.
We sit here and we record, and then I take the footage home and I do an edit and I upload it. So it's
your full-time job.
It's a completely DIY thing. So if you want to support us in that, there are plenty of ways you can do it. Like I say, shoot us an email if you want to support us financially. We'll have a chat. But leave us a review.
Incredible. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. I feel like we've just finished a year-long conversation.
It was massive, wasn't it? Yeah, I'm exhausted after that one.
Yeah, big long one. But just a massive thank you to all of our listeners. Again, we wouldn't still be doing it unless there were people that are tuning in.
We are very grateful that you listen.
Yeah.
And that you give comment and feedback to us, because we love hearing what you think and feel. The good, the bad, the ugly, all of it.
Yeah.
Because it helps sharpen us as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah. We've got some really exciting things planned for next year as well that we can't talk about just yet.
Let's do it in the first episode next year.
That's right. So thank you for supporting us over these we started in Easter of 2022, however long that is. It's because of your support that we get to launch some even more exciting things
Cool
next year.
stuff.
So keep an eye out for those. Come chat to us at a live show. We'd love to see you there. All the stuff for that down below. Like I said, leave a review. Whatever you're doing tonight, have fun.
Yeah.
Be safe.
Make good choices.
Make good choices. Thank you so much, and have an amazing January break. There'll be some episodes coming up in the feed over January, but at this point, here in real life land, we're taking a bit of a break. So
Yay.
We'll see you when we come back in a little bit. Thanks, Ness.
See you, Jonty.
See you later.
Bye.
This is a prayer for the people who want to give up, who have been